Pardon me while I have a strange interlude.
There is nothing else. Life is an obscure hobo bumming a ride on the omnibus of art.
Along the misty corridors of time, and in those corridors I see figures, strange figures.
Welcome back, my friends, to the AP Strange Show. I am your host, AP Strange. This is my show, and tonight's show is brought to you by the Jackalope Rescue Society. The purpose of the Rescue Society is to set people up with a nice adoption of a jackalope, because there are many that are in need of adoption, and we don't want to support the jackalope breeders out there with their unscrupulous practices. So go see the Jackalope Rescue Society to find the jackalope that's right for you. And on tonight's show, excited to do this one because I have a multi-talented, multidisciplinary artist that I happened to meet IRL, as the kids say these days. And I bought a piece of art from her and then went to her website, and I was blown away by the various methods that she's able to use, and the research that goes into it, and some strange synchronous connections that between her work and stuff that I've been doing. The artist is Caitlin Fitzgerald, and she's just great. I'm excited to get into all of this stuff. How are you doing, Caitlin?
Good. That was fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're fantastic. I mean,
Just
I'm
a
not lying.
compliment loop.
Yeah. Well, we'll just keep going back and forth.
Mhm.
I have had shows like that sometimes, but no, but I mean, seriously, when I bought the artwork from you and then came home, I'm like looking online. I'm like, oh shit. Oh, there's even more. Oh, and jackalopes, and oh, there's a whole story behind this artwork. So I guess just to start out, what has your journey been like for the art and the research? Like, which came first for you, and kind of like what got you started on all of it?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic framing for it. They kind of just go hand in hand. Um,
Yeah,
I've always made art, and I've always been interested in mythology and folklore. When I was in high school, I had a fantastic Latin teacher who also ran a comparative mythology course that I fell in love with. And it was there that from there I bought my first copy of The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. And when I went to college, I wanted to double major in
yeah,
art and comparative mythology, neither of which is super conducive for regular layman work. But I think it really illustrates what has driven the two. They're a match set. They go together for me. It's always been deeply researched material paired with artistic practice. And I think a lot of my time has been reconciling the two with each other and kind of led me to where I am now.
yeah. I mean, they do seem very much intertwined. It's almost like a feedback loop where you find stuff in folklore and mythology and old manuscripts and things like that that inspire you to want to create the art, and then kind of it doubles on itself, and it's kind of a snowball effect, huh?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that's, 100% what's kind of happening here. The more I research, the more inspiration I'm gathering. Um, Whether it's, you know, things like jackalopes, right? Sort of an Americana folklore section, or medieval manuscripts, which can have varying degrees. I've been doing a lot of books of hours work, or medieval mythology, things of that nature. It's sort of focused in on a few core areas over time, but it changes up a lot, and they kind of all feed into each other, and um drive sort of all these different ways of being expressed through, the illustration work that I'm doing, or the stained glass pieces that I'm working on, or ceramics, which is sort of a newer media for me to be working in. I really only started doing that about a year ago. Um, and just kind of looking at different ways of telling these stories. And it's really, for me, it's narrative driven. The stories are interesting. The timeline of them is interesting, how old these things are, right? We talk about
Right.
jackalopes, but um you can see them in Renaissance art. So they've
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. I mean, you said Americana, so I was like thinking, yeah,
So right, but it starts as an Americana, right? The traditional jackalope is sort of comes in the category, I believe, of like a fearsome critter, or a
yeah, out of
trickster.
lumberjack lore. Yeah,
Yeah, lumberjack
yeah,
lore and things of that nature, which is kind of where I started with it. But if you pull the thread, you can find something called a lepus cornutus, and my Latin is really bad, and my pronunciation is even worse. But it's a horned rabbit, and they had them. You can see them in medieval paintings. You can see them depicted in not not the traditional really really old bestiaries, but some of the like 1700 ones. You can see these rabbits depicted with horns, and anyone who's super familiar with the jackalope theme may have heard of the papilloma virus that can infect
yeah,
rabbits, and I think deer can get it as well, that produces sort of knobby horn looking protrusions. But they were depicted. That's, in theory, what we're seeing,
yeah.
right, being depicted in these manuscripts. And that's kind of where this thing is sort of um originating from. And another great example is also the almirage, which is sort of the unicorn rabbit. uh
Okay.
that I
I saw
also
one of these on your Instagram, so I
yeah
was like
so
curious about that. Yeah.
yeah
El
so these
Mirage is what it's called.
yeah it's a I believe it's an Arabic word, and it's originates from I don't know how familiar you are with Alexander the Great, or what are referred to as the Alexander romances, which
Hmm.
was it's a type of manuscript that depicted Alexander the Great in all sorts of fantastic adventures. He was off fighting giants, he was traveling under the sea. They got kind of more and more elaborate and outlandish and mythologized. And some of my favorite depictions include his horse Bucephalus. Again,
Hmm.
my Latin is bad. Uh, as a unicorn with a peacock tail, so it's all this like fabulous stuff, right? There's all these monsters that are not really, we know Alexander the Great existed, but
Hmm.
ride around on a unicorn? I'm not saying no. Uh, but the Almirage actually comes from a Persian Alexander romance. It was a rabbit with one horn that was terrorizing an island, and Alexander the Great, freed the island from the menace, and that was his reward, was to be given this ferocious rabbit with one horn.
Wow. Like, did he kill it or did it?
So I'm
Is
actually,
that
as I said it, I realized I misrecounted the tale. So the tale is
okay?
that a serpent was attacking an island. I'm not sure why, like a big sea serpent attacking an
Yeah.
island. Alexander the Great goes and feeds, I believe he takes the carcasses of cows and he fills them with poison and feeds that to the serpent. the serpent eats it and dies, and the almirage was his reward. But it was also known to be very ferocious and like a killer of men. So I'm not sure what he did with it.
Hmm.
Uh, but this is an example actually of some really early research driven work on my side, because um, I first came across them probably around 2018. There wasn't a lot of information about what this almirage was other than something that was cited in D&D manuals. And
Okay.
I like a primary source. I need a lot of times I want a primary source. Give me a primary source. And so I remember spending a day flipping through I believe the Biblioteca Nationale in France. They have digitized a huge amount of their collection, so you can flip through the
Mhm.
manuscripts, and they had some of these Persian manuscripts, and you can see them illuminated to depict these rabbits.
Are they in Arabic?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So not a language I could read, but there's enough translation work that I at least was able to see a primary source
Yeah, right.
that was a manuscript from the time period that was appropriate for it and wasn't just an internet website talking about, right? Because a lot of times if you're researching old stuff, everyone just starts to cite one primary source, and who knows if that source is accurate or not.
Right.
And you just keep seeing this person citing this person who's citing this person, and it's all the same. And so
It
that
goes
was what,
around in a circle, yeah.
yeah, right. And then you find that that primary source maybe never existed or was a hoax or that happens not
Mhm.
infrequently. Um, so I guess that, it's just a good illustration of how that drive to kind of find a primary source has been present in a lot of my work, and also kind of the love of the manuscript and the handmade book, and you know the hundreds of year old texts that you can many are now digitized now. And also shout out Boston Public Library. Residents of Massachusetts can make appointments to go see their manuscript collection,
Yeah, yeah,
which is fantastic. I think other libraries do as well, but I've gone to the Boston Public Library a bunch to go look at books of hours that are 500 years old, and you can spend as long as you need to with the source materials. And I think I'm constantly blown away that that resource is available to residents of the state. And it's been a source of inspiration for a lot of my work, but I just think it's a fantastic thing to have. What a treasure trove. They don't have just manuscripts, right? They have art, they have founding fathers documents. They have all
yeah,
these things in their special collections that people can go and just make an appointment and see them.
yeah. I mean, that is fantastic. And then, in the previous episode where I was talking about illuminated manuscripts with the guest Leah Prime, it like never occurred to me that you could just go ask, and people there's people there that'll bring it out, and I'm like, well, I mean, I guess I kind of knew that intellectually, but I never really thought about it on a practical level. Like, Boston's not far. I go there all the time. I can just why don't I do that?
And they're super pumped too. They're always excited.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they love people using the resources. I will say it is an online request system, so I don't know if you just like walked in and asked if they'd have any available, because they have to kind of pull them off the shelves, but it's free. What a great way to spend an afternoon. And then there's a
right.
bar in the library too. So when you're done, you can go have a nice cocktail and like
That is fantastic.
your, you
Yeah,
know,
but
your great.
I'm a big fan of the Bibliothèque Nationale as well too, because as you said, they have a lot of it online.
Yes.
So you don't have to go to Paris, but you can. uh, and if
And
you
they
speak
seem to have
French,
a
it's
better
good.
infrastructure than the British Museum, which got hacked, I think, last year, and so most of their manuscripts are down now.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, the French one is pretty accessible, I would say, and
Yeah,
easy to use. Yeah.
even if you
Um,
don't speak French, which I definitely do not.
right. I can read French just well enough to like figure out the context, and then
Yeah,
I have to look up little words and stuff. Yeah, but uh, but the as you were saying too about the Almirage and finding that old manuscript, like there's this really uh, alluring kind of mystique to these old pages. And it's kind of almost cooler that it's in Arabic or French or some language you can't read, because it has like a mystical, esoteric quality to it. I imagine that's very inspiring as well. Uh,
yeah, definitely. Even the books in Latin, a lot of the materials that I've been viewing at the library are books of hours for the Cult of Saint Guinefort project that I've been working on,
yeah.
which we can get into. But specifically, it's focused around books of hours, which I really love because a lot of them they were for the lay population. And they were often for women. And you can see when you're sitting with a book that's 500 years old, and you can see what pages were the favorite because they're more
Mhm.
worn, or the corners are shinier because that's where your hands were. There's something so profound about that. And also, to your point, not really being able to, I I can read some Latin. I can't read that black letter squished together,
Mhm.
shortened, right? A lot of the words are shortened in ways that I'm not super from. I am not a scholar.
Yeah.
I didn't get to double major in comparative mythology and art. I just ended up with an art degree. So a lot of it is really, you start to pick things out over time, and that gets really exciting as well. But it is amazing to sit with a illustration that you kind of have no context for.
Right, because then the pattern seeking part of your brain kind of tries to build a story where there's the absence of context. So
Yeah, you mythologize on your own. You build up your own stories. And that's part
right.
of the beauty, part of the appeal and beauty for me for specifically mythology, folklore, folk tales, these sort of belief systems that fall a bit outside of religious doctrine, is
Mhm.
that they do change over time, and they become like living, breathing stories that have new endings and different versions. And that's very cool as well. You can find a really old version of a tale that's completely different from a more recent one.
Yeah. And I mean, if you uncover some of these old ones, you can breathe new life into them where they may have otherwise been sort of forgotten about, which I guess was sort of the case with the Guinefort stuff, right? How did you discover Saint Guinefort? I mean, I suppose we should give listeners a little idea of who that was. But
Yeah.
he's, yeah, a Catholic dog saint, folk
He,
saint.
yeah. So, Saint Guinefort is a 13th century folk saint, and he was worshipped in the Lyons area of France, and just so happened to be a greyhound and not a human, uh, which was unacceptable to the church at a time when they were canonizing a lot of folk saints. It was not an uncommon practice.
Mhm.
Um, and so, kind of to give you the whole rundown, the original author of the tale, Stephen of Bourbon, was a Dominican. And in the 13th century, we weren't quite yet at like witch trials and inquisition, but the Dominicans would become the inquisitor, one of the branches of inquisitors for the Catholic Church, uh,
Yeah.
along with the Franciscans. So those two orders would become, you know, the majority of who was seeking out heresy and witchcraft and sort of punishing a lot of those activities a little bit later from now. 13th century, 1200s. He was a contemporary of Saint Dominic, the founder of the order. He was tasked with traveling the countryside, and again in this sort of pre Inquisition role, he was preaching and sort of correcting folk practices. And rather than Guinefort becoming like a this is heretical, this is witch based, which a lot of the tale kind of is, it fell under superstition at that time, is what they were sort of
Okay.
saying. And they were sort of correcting these misguided folk belief systems as they traveled the countryside. And a lot of times, though, that would look like canonizing a folk saint if they had found one who had a legitimate case, basically. And you see it a lot with synchronized saints. Ireland's got tons of great examples. Saint Bridget, right? We know that's
Yeah, yeah.
great, etc. So it was a legitimate practice to go around and do that. However, he writes in his tale, because you can kind of read a bit of surprise in his voice as he recounts this tale, that he's going to the village in the area, and he's receiving confession from the women that they're going through this practice to this saint. And the practice is that they're led by an old woman, already suspicious.
Right.
It involves a well, again, another pagan sort of icon in a lot of well worship and water worship and things of that nature. And they are performing the ceremony where they're kind of dunking their babies and they're leaving their clothes tied around the well. And they're praying to the saint, and the saint is helping them, cure the babies. And when he asks about, oh, well, who's the saint? Tell me more about him. That's when it comes out that the saint is actually a greyhound. And
Yeah.
that's not acceptable. If it was a guy, we'd be okay.
Right. I mean, I think in your writing about it, it sounded like he got the story from an older woman in the village, which sounded kind of witchy to me. I imagine going to like a little witch's um, hut or something and getting the story of Saint Guinefort, you know.
Yeah, and so he was doing a lot of this. So the it's funny, it actually comes from a book that he was writing at the end of his life that were supposed to be examples for people, for other preachers or priests, if you were working on a mass and you wanted to cover different. So he was working on this document at the end of his life that was exempla of all these different kinds of tales. This is arguably the most famous, even though it's far more well known than it was 15 years ago. I will say that. It's not super well known.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it has its niche. And so these were supposed to be examples that you could give when you were writing a mass, or you were talking to, you were preaching in the countryside, and, well, let me tell you this story and warn you about this practice, because that's the devil is tricking you into thinking this dog is saving your children, etc. So, and that's where this falls under kind of the superstition. So that's where it was preaching against, like, don't fall for superstition, the illusions of the devil, the enticements. And so he has many other, like I say, he's got a whole book full of them. I have slowly kind of started to work my way through them. They're all in Latin, so I'm using really bad Google Translate to try and see the other stories, because this is just one little blip in a huge manuscript of tale. There's some really fascinating other ones. There's one where someone puts a host, like the little bread you get at the host. What else is it called? Anyway, someone puts it in their beehive to protect the bees, and
Yeah.
they find that the bees build a church around it and put it inside the church. And then this is considered a bad thing that has happened, that you've given the bees a communion wafer, and they've
Right.
now
Yeah.
built a church. The bees, and that's recorded as a true story
Huh.
that someone did. So he's got tons of tales like this, right? And they're
I mean,
all
that sounds like a miracle to me, you know.
right. So it's interesting because dog saint doesn't necessarily sound like a bad thing. Uh,
Right.
but, you know, it was a time where the 13th century in this kind of area, there was a lot of tension that was starting to build up because the Catholic Church was growing and growing, and there was starting to be more merchant class. So there was more trade. There was a middle class was kind of coming up. They were starting to be able to educate themselves and read. And so there was a tension as the population was maybe not as just taking everything at face value from the church anymore. And so that's why we're starting to see people like Stephen of Bourbon go around and start to say, like, you can't do this. This, this folk saint, will have him canonized. That dog, we're going to have the bones dug up and burned, and you can't worship him anymore, and you can't do this. And so it's a really just an interesting look into kind of what was happening in Europe at that time and how
Yeah.
people were taking these folk tales and developing them in other ways that would suit their daily needs. They needed someone to pray to protect their children and protect against plague and protect mothers, which is what his primary focuses were kind of those three things.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I guess he was murdered in the course of saving a child, so tragically.
Yeah, so I guess for that actual part, because I obviously didn't cover that, is how did the dog end up dead? Uh,
Right,
yeah, it's basically the tale is that there's a knight, he's got a baby, and everyone leaves the castle, except for the dog, Guinefort, and the baby. A snake enters the castle. I don't know how many super poisonous snakes there are in Lyons, France, but
right.
one shows up here.
In
And
days of yore, there were a lot, so.
uh, it's an interesting, I think, look at the anxieties, right? Snake scary. Or that's
If-
sort of
yeah,
like
they were
quintessential,
always kind of used as a villain,
right? They're an easy bad guy.
yeah, right.
So the serpent comes into the castle and is going for the baby, apparently, and the dog ends up killing the serpent, in that process overturning the cradle, and blood gets everywhere. The dog's got blood, the cradle's turned over, there's blood on the floor, the baby's, just like under the cradle, and nursemaid comes in, sees the scene, screams, runs out. Mom comes in, sees the scene, screams, run out. Knight comes in, sees the scene, kills his dog because his assumption is my dog has killed my baby. Um,
Right,
Finally, the baby wakes up and starts crying, and the knight realizes what he's done. He's killed his
right.
dog, actually saved his baby's life, and he's overcome with remorse. They bury the baby in a well, and
The dog.
the baby in a well, the dog in a well.
Yeah.
They just tuck a baby in a well, dog's fine, whatever. So yes, they
That
bury the
would be
dog
a
in a well.
bizarre ending to the story.
Kind of
This is all
bizarre.
your fault, baby.
If you had just woken up, I mean, this is a really well slept baby. It's like a snake comes in, its crib gets knocked over, it's covered in blood, everyone's screaming,
Right,
baby's asleep. So they put the dog in the well and I think they fill it in with rocks, and then eventually the castle falls into ruin. So
yeah.
people start praying at the well, and they're finding that the dog is, helping helping their children heal. Uh,
Mm.
and they're tying scraps of clothing, and they're performing these kind of pagan rituals, right? It's clearly a pagan sort of inspired. It reminds me a lot. I don't know if you've heard of a Clootie well. I think that's
Hmm.
Scotland. Yeah, the scraps of fabric, because they describe it as having like fabric tied around the trees, and their focus is solely on this well. So it's
Yeah.
obviously a far-reaching. Uh,
Well, it's always funny to me though, because like the Catholic Church has so many witchy elements to it and spooky
oh
like
yeah,
ritual I mean, they have relics for all the saints. They have pilgrimage sites. There are the miracles that are attributed to those. So it
Mhm.
doesn't seem like beyond the pale, but I guess a dog is a bridge too far for the
That
Dominicans of
and
that era.
that is basically it, is the dog was a bridge too far. And I think that's part of what you pick up, right? When you read through his initial text and he's asking, well, tell me more about this saint. Oh, it's a dog. Oh, we can't have
Mm,
that.
right,
Uh,
right.
it does have a lot of the things match up where it's ticking a lot of the boxes of folk saint that you would traditionally see canonized as an official. Oh, miracles are being performed. Yep. Okay. We're seeing like prayers are getting answered and
Hmm.
miraculous recoveries. Okay. This sounds all good. And so, really the then becomes, well, no, it's not a miracle. That's the devil tricking you. Um,
Right.
and actually
Um,
a basic version of this tale is in The Lady and the Tramp,
oh,
where if you were, I don't know when the last time you saw Lady and the Tramp was. For me, it was very long ago. But there's a
probably
scene
30
where,
years ago. Yeah.
yeah, there's a scene where a rat gets into the nursery. And if you remember,
Oh,
the dog Tramp jumps into the nursery, attacks the rat, overturns the cradle. The baby's crying. They run in, they blame the dog.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
And
Okay.
so Jean-Claude Schmitt wrote The Holy Greyhound, which is basically that's the tech, like that's the book. It's a really great dive. He wrote it in the 80s, French author. It was originally published in French. There are English versions of it, and he goes through every instance of this story because it
Okay.
pops up not just in this one tale. You get versions of it, like I just mentioned, Lady and the Tramp. There's versions in a book called The History of the Seven Sages, where they're sort of moralizing tales. There's a version that Ricky Tikki Tavi, the story about the mongoose that's saving the
Yeah.
baby from a snake, is attributed as a similar-esque kind of structure.
Hmm.
So it does have a lot of folk tale origins, and it seems to survive after in other areas in that way. I think in Germany, you see a lot of it as a folk tale. The knight, there's several versions where it's Guinefort is not named and he's not identified as being a saint that's providing miracles, but the faithful hound is like a folklore motif that you see
Right.
again and again that's protecting a baby
Oh,
from an interloper.
hmm. Interesting. Yeah, and then in the tarot, you have like the fool has like a little dog with him
Hmm.
too. That seems to be kind of warning him about the cliff he's about to step off of.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing with dogs is they're really they're kind of the best versions of humanity, a lot of,
Hmm.
right? And I think in a lot of folk tales as well, they are the foil for the wolf, which would have been a much more serious threat in medieval Europe than it is today.
Yeah.
It would have been seen as, the absolute, it would have been a legitimate concern in your village. Wolves is a
Right.
dangerous item, and dogs would be the good version of that. Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Although the piece of art that I bought for you is one of the Guinefort ones, and at the time I remember it kind of reminded me of some of the Catholic folk tales from Ireland, where there's like werewolves, but they're like
mm,
holy werewolves and they're protectors of the village. I forget what the name of them was, but they're so I mean, yeah, the wolf isn't always terrible, but yeah, I take your
right.
point there. Like the wolf hound was bred specifically to keep the wolves away, you know, like so. Um,
Yeah, and I
yeah,
mean, and again, dogs aren't always seen as good. Uh,
right,
but I think a lot of I think specifically because it's a greyhound, which is sort of would have been like the bougiest of the dogs.
right,
Um, uh, they were status symbols, right? They were your hunting greyhounds were,
yeah,
number one hunting dog, fastest. So they would have been a very fancy dog versus just some sort of
Yeah.
mixed breed
A
or
dog for a night. Yeah.
a
Like
dog for a
yeah.
night. A
Yeah.
fancy man's dog, definitely.
Right.
You see them a lot depicted in like the unicorn hunt tapestries. So some of the versions of Guinefort I've done have sort of tried to incorporate some of that unicorn tapestry, sacred unicorn hunt kind of imagery as well, because there
Mm,
are so many different ways you see dogs depicted throughout medieval myth and folklore and all these different avenues. And I think for Guinefort particular, what I'm looking to do is because there's no existing medieval art depictions. We know
you're right.
he was being worshipped. I'm sure there was something, but I'm kind of playing around with the idea of what if there was, and so
Yeah.
reinserting him back in, bring him back up. And there's evidence, Jean-Claude Schmitt in his book does outline there's evidence that the cult of Saint Guinefort was active up until like the 1930s. So Stephen of Bourbon was not successful in
Right.
demolishing this folk practice. There's evidence in the 1800s it was brought up in a couple letters between clergymen, and I believe in the 30s he cites in his book, he goes to the area and he talks to people, and they were talking about a woman who would walk the pilgrimage of Saint
Hmm.
Guinefort for people in
So
the
would they go to where the well was? Like, because the well was demolished, right? So they would just have to kind of go to basically where it was, or
yeah. So he found the site of where it would have been, uh,
right.
and there's very old. So the website that I'm kind of putting this all into, that cultofguinefort.com, has I'm hoping to compile all of this, as well as, his book is, again, that's the authority. It's really good.
Hmm.
It's, not everyone wants to read a whole book. I've read it several times. But I'm hoping to translate kind of all of those things over into this website, because he found like maps that show St. Guinefort's forest, and it's written on the map. And so
Hmm.
he was able to go to France, and there's a place you can go in France that this is where it would have been. There's nothing there. It's literally a forest. I think it's kind of on the side of the road now. Um,
Well,
they,
it's good that it hasn't been like developed on, and like it's just condos now or something.
right. Yeah, yeah, that probably would have been even worse. But there's no evidence of a well. I think they did find evidence of structures, but uh, there's not a church sitting there or anything.
Hmm.
But his research did find, there was a site, and so someone was practicing. You would pay someone to do a pilgrimage for you, which is very Catholic, I feel like. You
Yeah.
just paying someone else to do it for you. But she would, again, up until this time period, she the practice died with her, but people would pay her to walk different pilgrimage sites in the area.
Wow. Oh. Well, I mean, I think you alluded to there being some sort of some manner of revival of the dog cult through some through his book and your artwork and everything too, right? So, because you think we could revive it and bring it back?
It's funny, when I see it more and more. So I first learned about Saint Guinefort probably over 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I first came across him in college, and I, for the life of me, cannot figure out where. So, as someone who wanted to double major, right, who wanted to study comparative mythology, I just ended up taking whatever myth, religious study sort of courses I could get my hands on, and it ended up looking like a lot of medieval studies, uh one on like monasticism, one on early Christianity, one that was like just focused on Abrahamic religions. So in one of those courses, somehow I stumbled across offshoot mention of this folk saint. Um, I still have all my college books. I still use them a lot. I can't find them in any of them, so I don't even
Huh.
know which one it was. Like, I may never know where I originally first stumbled across him, but from there I ended up with Jean-Claude Schmidt's book, which was really hard to find back then, and there was nothing else about this dog. You couldn't like Google it, nothing would come up. It definitely has a lot more people engaged with the story now. I think it really just speaks. It's one of the most popular things that I've created is the illumination work of Saint Guinefort. I think it just really resonates. It's a story that really resonates.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah, I mean,
sad.
I think we failed to mention here too that you're doing basically you're recreating, well, not recreating, you're creating whole cloth illuminated pages like in the old illuminated manuscripts. So, I mean, just to underline to my listeners that this is a very detail oriented process that takes a lot of skill. So, when I saw these on your at your table, I was looking at them. I'm like, huh, I wonder what book this is from, and then I realized it was your original art, and I was blown away by it because it looks just like a medieval manuscript.
Yeah, so that's kind of the goal. As is talking about there being no existing, and that's sort of in a roundabout way that's probably not laid out incredibly well for the listener who's just stumbling across this. The goal of this work is to answer the question of what if St. Guinefort was included in all of this medieval material? So that's where the focus on books of hours, because they were a lay creation, you could have them customized to include whatever saints you wanted. Um, so essentially, a book of hours, and I go over it in my blog, but they're a collection of prayers so that you could follow along at home, basically, with what
Mhm.
they were doing in monasteries for daily prayers. They were very common to give as gifts for brides to be, or to your wife, or to even just to relatives. You could have a very, very fancy illuminated manuscript made, and it would be a very impressive gift to give to show how rich you were, how powerful you were, so you get a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
kings and etc. making them or having them made. And so they would have suffrage sections, which is the section in the back of the book which is to individual prayers to saints. And so that's what I'm doing is I'm reinserting him into the suffrage section with a probably poorly translated made up Latin prayer uh,
yeah.
of my own. Um, and so I'm using existing. So the first one I did was for the Book of Hours of Catherine of Cleves, which is at the Morgan Library in New York City, and it was probably the first book of hours that I really got into. It's because um it had a huge exhibition in the 70s because they
Mhm.
unbound the book for conservation work. And at that time, they made a really high quality facsimile and printed it really broadly.
Hmm.
So I got a used copy of it long, long, long ago for pretty cheap because facsimiles even can start to get really, really expensive. I've been lucky enough to see it at the Morgan. It wasn't on display the last time I was at the Morgan. I'm not sure how often it rotates in and out, but it has, I would argue, the best suffrage section of like any illuminated manuscript. They're just so fanciful and weird.
Hmm.
Uh, the marginalia is got a ton of personality. The saints are beautifully illustrated. So that was the first one I did, and I've sort of been going on from there. A lot of them are, I think I did the Hours of Henry VIII, which is also at the Morgan. The bell hours of the Duc de Berry, which is at the Cloisters in New York City. And I'm starting to move on now to works that are in the Boston Public Library. So
Cool. Yeah,
they have a book called the Quebriac Hours that I've sat with a whole bunch that has a really nice suffrage section that the current page that I'm working on that's sort of just been sitting around all year
yeah.
is going to be based on that.
Nice, nice. So when you talk about the marginalia, is this like the well, I think you've done some recreations of like the snails that are that
Yeah.
decorate some of these books too, and like uh, I'm not sure if I'm remembering this incorrectly, but have you done any of the rabbits with like weapons? Uh,
Um, yes, in some of them I
yeah.
have because I hope to incorporate it more because a lot of depictions of greyhounds also include rabbits because that's
Okay.
what you would most commonly have them hunting. But love a good marginalia. It's where a lot of humor and personality comes out in a text. It's where
Hmm.
they had the most freedom. So you get that's where you get like the funny snails fighting rabbits, rabbits fighting dogs, a rabbit dressed up in armor riding a dog like a horse. You just get all the funny, that's where all the funny
Yeah.
stuff. I think it's where the artist
they're
got to play.
yeah, they're like little cartoons in the margin almost. You know?
Mhm. And you can see where more freedom was given and less freedom. And you can see some really great, a lot of times the marginalia is thematic to what the rest of the text is about, but a lot of times it isn't. It's just a random, like naked little guy playing the horn or something. You get really weird
Right.
little there's one that I really love that's in one of the books of hours of the Boston Public Library that's like a little pantsless goblin with bird feet and he's riding a snail. I don't know
Oh,
what
that's
he is,
awesome.
but he's just like very charming.
Yeah.
He's just riding on a snail. He's got a bow and arrow. He's hunting something. It
Hmm.
just seemed like it would have been a lot of fun to do. That would be the best part, I think, of the manuscript to illuminate.
Right. Yeah, I'd almost want little backstories for all those little guys, you know?
I mean, a
The
lot of them do have established, like it's weird because I've seen that guy in other manuscripts,
okay.
but I don't know what he is. So they clearly had like in jokes or established, a lot of them had established tales. You'll see like foxes dressed up as monks, and that was a common sort of fable of that time. So
Hmm.
some of them have been lost, some of those stories have been lost, but some of them we know. And if
Yeah.
anyone knows about the weird little goblin naked man riding the snail, definitely let me know because send me an
Well, I
email. I'm
mean,
curious about what he's up to.
I do know that the bird feet is usually an indicator of something demonic. Um,
Oh yeah.
right. So it might be like an imp or something like that, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
he's clearly like a little, he's not a cherub. He's up to no good. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, like a hellish imp or something like that, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and I guess maybe maybe he's just supposed to represent temptation because the snail is about being insignificant and slow, right? So it's the thing that hinders you from making your way towards perdition.
Well, so yeah, snails are really interesting in medieval manuscripts and depictions because there's certainly that
Yeah.
explanation, right? That they're seen as slothful and lazy and being in your way, but they were also considered to be the most modest of God's creatures because they were always wearing their house. So they were kind of seen as a bit pious sometimes too.
Hmm.
Uh, and they were clearly garden pests, and a lot of manuscripts, you would be making your materials in-house and your materials would be grown. So
Hmm.
you would be battling snails a lot, but you could also use the slime from a snail as a binder in paint. So I think there's this sort of like love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
These two aspects to snails in medieval society where they were a pest. They were probably also consumed as food, but they would be eating your garden, but they were also useful. So
Right.
really fascinating. The snails are very interesting to me because there is one book of hours at the library that just is full of snails. Um,
Yeah.
the Illuminator clearly had a fascination with them, but many did as well because you see them a lot of depicted frequently. So it's interesting that so many of these things had layers, right? Like the greyhound having so many different layers and depictions, and the snails, the whatever's
Mm,
in your marginalia. It so often wasn't just a one note, which I think is really interesting to dive into. You know, the more you pull the thread, the weirder it gets, which is fun.
yeah. And speaking of weird, I mean, you also covered a folk saint that was a mermaid on the site. Is this right?
Yes, actually, not a folk saint, an
Okay.
official saint.
An official saint that's a
An
mermaid.
official
Okay.
saint. Yeah. Even weirder. Even weirder. So,
So dogs aren't allowed to be saints, but mermaids are. Okay, got
yep.
it.
And yeah, so Liban or Saint um Murgelt or Murgan is an Irish Catholic saint. Her feast day is the 27th of January or February, forgetting. Um, that's another example, though, of finding these layered stories and looking for primary source material. I had to kind of cobble it together from a lot of different places, and the story changed quite a lot every time I read it. The basic story, and this is, I think, for Liban, this is a clear case of a pagan tale, and she was canonized, and that was going to solve that problem. So where Guinefort was a dog, and that didn't quite make the cut, Liban was close enough, and so they
Right.
were okay with canonizing her and making her a saint. I think the mermaid myths in Ireland are prolific, and a lot of them follow a very similar pattern to her story. Basically, who she is a Catholic saint. She's officially canonized. She's found in the Lives of Saints books from Ireland, I think dating back to like the 5th century, really old.
Yeah.
Old tale. Clearly, it's a pagan story that has been, where Guinefort wasn't allowed to become a saint because he was a dog. She was close enough. So this is an
Right.
example of that, taking a pagan story and making it okay for the Catholic Church. So the version that I have is cobbled together from, again, multiple source materials. And it goes: once, long ago, Mara, the good and righteous king of Munster, had 2 sons. One son fell in love with his stepmother, and the two absconded from the kingdom. One night, while making their escape, their horses and company were killed by a stranger on the roads. Mighty Angus of the Tuatha De Danann, who had been fostered by the stepmother as a child, appeared and gave to them a marvelous horse to carry them and their belongings, but he warned them not to stop or to let the horse urinate until they reached their final destination, or it would mean their doom. They agreed, but the horse urinated when they reached Ulster, and the forces of its stream caused a wellspring to appear. It was here that they built their home and capped the spring with a stone and assigned a woman to watch over it to keep it from flooding the surrounding land. One day, this same woman forgot to cover the well. Some accounts say this was because she heard the screaming of her baby and ran to its aid. At any rate, the well overflowed and flooded the area, drowning the entire family except for 3 of the children. So basically, 3 people are left alive, and it's basically the daughter's one of them. So
Right.
Liban, she was inside her bower with her dog. The floodwaters rose, and the water didn't come into her chamber. After 1 year stuck inside, she wished to be turned into a salmon so that she could get out of her room. This was granted. That never says who it was. She was turned into a mermaid, her dog was turned into an otter, and for 300 years they're roaming the waters and they're traveling the rivers that feed into the lake. The dog otter never left her side. And it was said on clear days you could see towers of the former kingdom below the waters of the lake. Hundreds of years passed. She's still doing her thing. And a monk who's traveling from the monastery of Benkar to visit Rome, heard singing under the water. He's on this same lake, so Liban appears to him. She tells him this whole story of everything that's happened, and he asks to meet her when he's on his way back, with the condition that she agree to be buried at his monastery when she passes, and she's agreeing to this. A year later, a whole crowd is gathered where this meeting is supposed to happen. It's, word's gotten out that there's going to be a mermaid. She's caught in a net of another monk, Fergus, who brings her onto land. She's meeting the visitors who are all waiting for her. They put her in a cart full of water. And as she's looking at the crowd, she sees like a relative of her surviving brother and blesses him.
Mhm.
A whole like family line kind of comes from this. And while this kind of is all going on, her otter has come out of the water and a local kid kills the otter. Otter dies. And she curses that family because they killed her dog.
Yeah, right.
Finally, there's a squabble between all of these monks that are from different monasteries because they want to figure out where Liban should be buried when she dies. Either at my monastery or my monastery, etc. And an angel appears and says that two white stags, or in some versions they're bulls, are going to appear. You'll yoke the cart that she's in to these two animals, and they're going to bring you to where she's going to be buried. And so the next morning, these, beasts from heaven show up and they yoke the cart and they bring her to the original monastery, the original monk who saw her in the water. And she is offered a final choice at that point. She can roam the earth for another 300 years, or she can be baptized and die immediately. And at that point, she's pretty done, and she chooses to just be baptized and die immediately and ascend to heaven. She's also told she'll ascend immediately to heaven. And that's basically it. She's like, okay, they baptize her, she drops dead, and that's how she became a saint.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, after hundreds of years with your dog and then somebody kills it, like, why would you want to hang around anymore, you know?
Literally. So the versions, I only found one version that includes all of this, one or two versions that include the whole account with the dog. Uh,
Mm,
if you look it up, you'll see a lot that just say, oh, she just chooses to die. And I'm sort of like, why would she just be like, if it was just like hanging out,
right.
whatever, and then you get the full image of this faithful hound is killed. Yeah, you'd probably be like, okay, I think I'm good. You killed my dog. You've been fighting about where you want me to be buried. I'm like, am I
Yeah.
not here? I've just been sitting in this cart while you fight amongst yourselves, and you killed my dog, and I think I'm over it.
Well, it's almost like, wow, Ireland ain't what it used to be. I used to be able to
Back my day, a girl wouldn't get bothered with her dog.
her otter dog. Yeah.
Sort of has this very sad element that isn't in the other versions I found, that is also really beautiful as well. Hopefully she's reunited. Uh,
Well, it's also kind of this weird like sublimation of the old pagan stuff, you know.
oh, definitely.
Right, like a passing of it. Like I kind of have a image in my mind of like Gandalf the White on the boat, kind of taking off, you know, like at the end of the whole series, you know. Um,
Yeah, and there's a lot. It's funny because there's a lot of mythology in Ireland about mermaids. Lots of stories about monks catching mermaids, lots of depictions of mermaids in churches. So it was clearly a big um, theme. But yeah, it becomes a very symbolic story about the closing of that era, right? That she becomes the end of pagan belief systems in that country, kind of.
right. And then just different forms of Christianity took over Ireland, and it ended well for everybody.
It's an interesting, I think that's where folklore and fables and mythology become so fascinating for me, is because it starts to look at the way belief systems have sort of impacted the way we think about things, whether it's, why is Liban a saint? Why is Guinefort not?
Right.
Um, wells are involved in both, dogs are involved in both, women with their faithful hounds are involved in both. It's really, really fascinating. And it's interesting to see how the stories get to survive or what gets to survive of them
Hmm.
and what doesn't. And I think it comes down to, right, who's telling the story or controlling that narrative. So it's a really interesting sort of, you kind of have to pull the thread again, right, to get
Yeah.
that.
And they both have like kind of a fairy realm theme too, because I
Sure.
guess Guinefort was one of his cures or miracles was that he could have changelings exchanged back for the original child. And yeah,
Yeah,
so
he was heavily associated with changelings. I also have a bit of a pet theory that I don't have very much evidence at all to back up, that his worship may have been a sort of an echo of maybe an Artemis sort of cult in
hmm,
that, because she was associated because of the Vetula aspect, the old lady, the woman who's sort of helping with this right, this protection of children, this association with hunting
hunting. Yeah,
and dogs were sacred. Again, I don't have any evidence, but there's a lot of association with Guinevere in particular with the Sirius, the dog star, and there's a lot of sort of Artemis, Sothis, Isis synchronization amongst those sort of goddess heads, and his ritual in particular with an old lady and dunking in water, and she was obviously, the tale made her an old lady, but she would have been a someone who had the knowledge of these specific rites that would protect changelings and children, which Artemis was heavily associated with. And we don't really know much about sort of the sacred practices, but um, it could be an indicator of a really early site of belief, and she was worshipped in those sort of areas. So
yeah.
um, never know. But they all become echoes of each other, right? It could have been a much earlier pagan, clearly with the chain, right? Clearly with the changeling stuff and the wrapping of the fabric in the well, that all says pagan.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's fascinating stuff to conjecture about, and I think in your artwork, the piece that I bought, you can see the Sirius stars
Mhm.
in the background, and it's almost like Univert's being like ascended, is kind of levitating, you know.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's the apotheosis. So
yeah,
that is when you are sort of called to heaven. Um, Again, kind of looking into reinserting him as what if this pendulum swung the other way, right? It
right,
all comes down to Stephen of Bourbon just saying no. What if he said yeah?
right. He could have. What a jerk.
Well, it's funny because the irony of the Dominicans is that their one of their big symbols is a dog carrying a torch.
Right.
As Dominican, because of a pun, basically. So Saint Dominic, according to legend, his mother dreamed of seeing a dog carrying a torch running around the world before he was born. And as a pun on Dominican is Dominicanes, being the dogs of, the hounds of God. And
Hmm.
so one of their images is a dog that often looks quite greyhoundy carrying a torch. So it's
Wow.
interesting that a Dominican would become associated with this sort of saint in particular.
Right. Yeah. Huh. Well, that's all. That's all really fascinating stuff. Um, but been going for a bit now, and I did definitely wanted to get into one more thing with you because in addition to all this other fascinating stuff, you do stain glass, and I was going through your Instagram posts and I saw a window that you were working on, and noticed that it was for Boleskine House, and I was like, "What? No way! The Boleskine House?" Because listeners to the show who know me know that that's kind of a synchronicity for me. I kind of recently did a presentation in Gettysburg that was heavily involved Boleskine House, and it's always been a subject near and dear to my heart. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about your journey with Boleskine and how you kind of came to that subject matter and that kind of work.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Uh, Definitely a synchronicity there. So basically, I think stained glass is probably my favorite of materials, and it requires a lot of space.
Yeah.
So now recently have a setup where I really can work on stained glass. So it's a near and dear one to me. Expect to see some Guinefort windows coming. Uh,
Yes.
but yeah, Boleskine House is just an amazing site. I haven't actually been to Boleskine House. I have been to the Highlands. The house was under private ownership at that time, so I wasn't going to, go trespass on someone's property. But
Right.
I think I first read about it in Perdurabo, which was Richard Kaczynski's really excellent uh, book on Aleister Crowley. Um, and I don't, I think you have been following Boleskine House for a while. I did listen to your
Oh
talk.
yeah.
I know you have been like an early supporter. So as you know, they have during the pandemic, they were posting a lot of stuff about the restoration of the house.
Mhm.
It just sort of the timing ended up where they kind of got stuck up there, clearing rubble in
Yeah.
high pandemic times. And I ended up catching a ton of their live streams during the pandemic. They would do a live at 5, which I think was like 11 o'clock my time because I was in New Orleans at the time. So several hours time difference. And I just remember, the pandemic was such an odd time in everyone's life.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And watching them clear rubble just like wheelbarrow by wheelbarrow was so endearing and fascinating at the same time. I remember when the house had, I think, the second fire right after they bought it. Uh,
Mhm.
there were so many people just saying like, that's it, it's done for. And it was such a oddly strange, like oddly sad moment.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, because it was kind of like, well, in my talk, I compared it to that whole Monty Python bit, which it only occurred to me in the moment with the falling down and sinking in the swamp. But
right.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, it was because I mean, for people following it for a long time, it's like, oh, they just bought it and they're actually making headway and gonna rebuild it, and then it catches on fire again. You're like, oh, come on. Really didn't think they were going to come back from it, but yeah.
Right. I think that was really what, and obviously the internet is full of opinions, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So kind of long story short, that was super impactful for me for whatever reason. Again, we were all going through it, and I remember I was doing a kitchen renovation, and I just remember being like, this is so painful. I can't imagine doing this, like clearing out an entire house's worth of rubble, wheelbarrow by wheelbarrow, by hand every day, and you're just stuck in the middle of nowhere because no one can go anywhere. We're all sheltering in place, and you're like, well, now I'm stuck with a house that's just full of rubble. um and so at the beginning of this year, I actually reached out to them because my when I do have a day job, it's in marketing.
Yeah.
Anyone's hiring, if anyone needs a marketer. Um, my role was eliminated last year because of a merger. And at the beginning of this year, I was looking at places to volunteer. I wanted to just keep building my skill set and resume. If you work in marketing, it moves fast. And if you're not continuously doing different things, you can get left behind really quickly. So I thought to myself, why don't I just reach out to a bunch of organizations that I like what they're doing and see if they need any marketing help? And they were the ones who enthusiastically said, yep, we do. We really need some help. And
Yeah.
so I started with them in that capacity in February. And they mentioned they were looking for, they in passing conversation, they were saying they were looking for someone to make a stained glass light. And I was like, well, I have the space to do it now. So I said to them, well, like, what are you looking for? What kind of thing are you looking for? And, long story short, I ended up making this light for them. And it incredibly got there safe and sound.
Yeah. I mean, that's a heck of a ship packing and shipping process all the way to Scotland with what I presume was a pretty large light, right? I mean, you have pictures of it, but that must have been a hefty item.
Yeah, it's about 33 inches across. It was all done in millimeters. So,
Okay.
um, for, European measurements. But yeah, it's about 33 inches, round.
Mm,
And it's made with Yakagani glass, which would have been period appropriate for, sort of a Egyptian revival theme, late Victorian design. So Yakagani actually, they're a company based out of Pennsylvania, but they actually remake traditional Tiffany style glass. So using like his recipes, who he would have been like the name at that in that sort of time period.
yeah.
And it weighs 20 pounds. It's got over 80 feet of lead. It's uh,
Wow.
got steel rebar reinforcement on the back to keep it from bowing. It was a ton of fun to make. Um, and I still can't believe every day that it made it there safe and sound because it did go missing for a little bit, but found its
Oh,
way to the house eventually. Um,
that must have been stressful when it was just.
It was, yeah, yeah, it was really stressful. I, may have taken a couple weeks off my life not sleeping on that one, but it honestly it shipped really fast and then it kind of got stuck. And then I apparently there's like one delivery company in the Highlands and they don't really give you updates once they have your
Yeah.
pack, which there. But it weighed 90 pounds when it was fully packaged in a crate. I had to custom build the crate for it.
Mm,
It was really like a crazy fun experience. I'm so lucky that I've had some really fantastic stained glass teachers, and I got to harass all of them about this. And I mean, they got hundreds of years of experience weighing in on the best way to make this light. Um, and I was just so appreciative to have that community supportive. Glass artists are very like it's a lovely community. And I was like I said, I was just able to I did a class last year in Italy. I was able to ask them their opinions. I took a class with Judith Schechter in Corning, New York this year. I was able to ask her what she thought I should, how do I support it? What's the best way to ship it? And again, all of that expertise came together to make sure that light looked its best and arrived safe and sound. So
yeah. That's amazing. And then hopefully you do get to go there eventually.
I'll be going next year. So they are in the final phases of renovation work. Um
Okay.
like major renovation work. They're should be wrapping up soon. They were supposed to wrap beginning of October, but they've run over a little bit, which, you know, it's major. It's everything. The work they're doing in the house is just like is stunning. If you've been watching the social media at all, uh,
Hmm.
the bespoke paneling, the custom fireplaces, they've just the schemes, the furniture they've done a lot of salvage work. They've had some beautiful bespoke pieces put in, like this light. But they've been
Yeah.
able to find some like fantastic Jacobean fireplaces and, salvaged chairs and these incredible pieces. And so next April, they'll be having their grand opening. So I'll be there for that. Um,
Yeah. Sounds awesome. And I had been following them for listeners. The Bleskin House Foundation, I think, is
Weston House
it,
Foundation.
you Google that, you can find their website. But they have a page on Facebook that they do regular updates. They're on Instagram, I believe. So
Yep.
yeah, you can kind of see the process and see the pictures and kind of how they arrived at some of this stuff. So I've loved following along with that over the years, and I didn't catch any of the live streams, but I like seeing the picture updates and reading what they're up to and the progress they're making. And it's been a journey for that building. It's, you know,
Been a wild journey. And if anyone's interested, I would say in the more esoteric history of the house, Dr. Andrew Wiseman did a fantastic talk for us a little earlier in the year. And so that is up on our YouTube channel. If anyone wants to listen to that, it's about, Crowley's time at the house.
mhm.
I think obviously your audience would find that really interesting. And
Yeah,
writing a whole book, every owner of that house has such an interesting history. I've just been really pulled in. I just got a book from the library about one of the that mentions one of the owners who was her name was Mary Rose Hill Burton, and she was a suffragette and a activist and a painter uh
mm,
in Scotland, and so was her mother, and she lived in the house and painted out of the house. And so I there's a book about Scottish female painters at like the turn of the century. It's just a really interesting, just so many interesting characters. The Fraser family, obviously from Outlander fame,
right.
uh,
Yeah,
built the house. And there's a Fraser fireplace that has gone in, sort of honoring that history. Very interesting as well. Archibald Campbell Fraser, very involved in sort of repealing the Highland Dress Act so that people in the Highlands could wear tartan again and things of that nature. So it's just chock full of really fascinating history, and I just really love what they're trying to build with this sort of community center that's focused on, preservation of the house, arts, education, you know, uh the
yeah. They're
green.
talking about hosting retreats and stuff like that, right? And,
Yeah, and
yeah,
making it just a community space where people can come and learn or enjoy. It's going to have something for everyone. It's going to have beautiful gardens. They have, I think, like 35 acres of wildflowers they've planted. They put in an apple orchard this year, and all the apples are going to be donated back to the community.
hmm,
Uh, they have an incredible solar array set up and thermo heat system that they've done with Rye Cruden. uh they're just making this really very cool place that they want anyone, everyone to kind of come and enjoy and have something that's interesting for everybody there. And the house is going to be, it's already stunning. I can't wait to see it when it's done. It's just incredible to think that 6 years ago it was just rubble.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's been an amazing work of art in and of itself. The artisan and craftsmanship that has gone into it, and the perseverance, which I guess is appropriate for Frater Perturabo's legacy.
I'm
Yeah,
I I'm coming in early 2025, right? Obviously, I've watched the house, but I don't know if I could have been shoveling rubble, and I probably would have run out of steam a while ago. So yeah, it's definitely, the group there is great. It's a really nice volunteer community, and everyone's really enthusiastic about having the space finished. And yeah, it's wild to me to just see how far it's come. Even just getting a roof up on it was,
yeah. Well, it's got to be heavy because they did like a slate roof, right?
yeah, it's all reclaimed, the Ballycullish reclaimed slate.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Because I have some pieces of the old slate and some like a bag of ash that came from the old house that I bought
mhm.
because for listeners at the time you could buy some. I think you still can. You can buy old rubble
You can
and
still get there. I will say, like, they are starting to run low on some of it. So
right.
If you're interested in some of that original sandstone, slate, etc., definitely check out the BelaskinHouseFoundation.org. The shop
Right.
is things are still up there for now, but I have heard that some of the items are running lower. They've had good support. Um, I that's another one I can't even imagine. Where would you store it all?
Yeah. Well, I was happy to know that the purchase that I made went toward the restoration. That was
Yeah, everything goes towards supporting the restoration, the foundation. Next year, once the grand opening is done in April, the house will be open for visitors. So you can you can even now start purchasing advance tickets or vouchers. But it'll be open for people to enjoy. So it'll be great to see that phase of the house where people can start to enjoy it and get to see the Highland areas because it's a
mm,
really beautiful part of Scotland. Inverness has some really cool stuff going on. Um,
yeah.
Hoping to bring some, s- you know, support for the local economy in the area. And Loch Ness is just a really beautiful area. Like I said, I've been to the Highlands. I didn't go to the house, but that whole area is just gorgeous. And I'm, you know, can't wait to go back, but it's beautiful out there and there's so many cool things and historic sites. And this will be just another one that people can really go and spend a really cool day. And very excited to see it wrap up.
Yeah.
It's crazy to, I mean, I for some reason I just still can't believe it's even like getting to that phase. I think a lot of people really did think that it was just not going to be able to come together.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you kind of hope it would, and then to actually see it come to fruition after all this time is pretty gratifying. So
Yeah,
yeah.
monumental amount of work and they're very very close now. It's very cool to see the updates and see how far the house has come and start to put those all those pieces in there. It's a really neat. But yeah, for listeners that are interested, grand opening announcements will probably be coming a little later, towards the end of this year, since the focus is on wrapping up the reno work. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, next April, and the house will be open seasonally, like April to September. That's sort of how things go in the Highlands. Uh,
Okay.
and it'll be
Yeah.
a really fun site. You should get out
Yeah.
there.
Well, yeah, I'll have to work on getting a passport and see if I can make that happen because I
Oh,
don't even have a passport right now. So,
mine is on my desk because it expires at the end of the year, and it's much easier to renew it than to.
oh yeah, yeah, you don't want to go through that process again.
No, I'm gonna
Uh,
need it, so
yeah, but for listeners, oh yeah, you will need it. So,
gonna have to be over there helping with this grand opening. So
right, yeah, but for listeners, again, just check out BleskinghouseFoundation.org. Is that what
yep.
it is? Yep. And of course, check out Caitlin's artwork online and her website because all of this stuff is like I said, I was blown away because when you're multidisciplinary in art the way you are, I like to dabble in a lot of things and I like to think I'm good at a lot of it, but I'm actually just really mediocre at most of it. I think I'm pretty good at writing and I'm pretty okay at talking, and then everything else I'm pretty mediocre at. So to see you be um, to see examples of your work where you're doing various things like the research and the manuscript illustrations and the stained glass and the ceramics and the jackalopes that you sell on your website, I'm like, she's great at all of it. Just some people are just great at everything. So
That is very kind of you to say. Uh, I could show you some of my first pottery pieces, and they would prove you wrong.
well, yeah, I mean, but you got there is the point of it.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, one of One of the upsides of not currently having a day job is lots of time to practice, but
Right, right. Yeah. But in that respect, where can people find all your stuff online?
yeah, so you can find me at CaitlinFitzgeraldArt.com, cultofguinefort.com for all the Guinefort related. I'm on Instagram at Caitlin Fitzgerald Art. I'm on Facebook at Caitlin Fitzgerald Art. I like to keep things easy.
Right.
I currently have about 21 jackalopes that are going to be up at Lemieux Gallery in New Orleans through the end of the year. So if anyone's in the greater New Orleans area, you can go check them out. They will be available. They make great Christmas gifts. Where else can people find me? Oh, I'll have some pieces at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts Christmas sale at the beginning of December by the Museum of Fine Arts at their location. And
In Boston?
yeah, in Boston.
Yep.
And I have an Etsy as well if anyone's looking for anything magical, illuminated, ceramics, couple glass pieces, or jackalopes.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah, Christmas is coming, folks. And you can, if you buy stuff from Caitlin, you won't be supporting evil corporations. So it's a
Nope.
good way to go. Yeah.
Buying more treats for my pets and more treats for me.
Yeah. You'll be supporting a woman and her stalwart hound. Uh,
Mm. Behaved pretty well through this. I'm really impressed.
yeah. Well, good dog. Good dog. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast, and I know people will love listening to this. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. Sorry it got rambly, but
Oh no, yeah, rambling is kind of part of the deal here. That's one of the things we do. So,
all
all right. Talk to you soon.
right.